Alright, this is I Teach 3D, and today we're going to take a look at creating a timeline for an elevator in the Unreal Engine 4, and I am using 4.18 is the version I'm using, just so everybody knows. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to use a basic cube, and that's going to be my elevator platform that I'm going to drag out here. And it's too thick, as you can see, so I'm going to scale it down to 0.1. And while we're there, let's make sure to make it movable, because if we don't make it movable, it won't move. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to press on my end key, which puts that right on the ground there. And if you notice, it's a 135 on the Z-axis location, which we're going to need that number later, so just remember that. Alright, let's also go out and let's, by the way, you have to use basic cube because that is a static mesh actor. We cannot use a geometry because that is BSP, and you can't animate BSP. So that's why we're using basic. Alright, let's go into volumes and let's pull out a trigger volume, something to trigger our animation with. So I'm going to pull that over there. I need to rescale it just a bit, so I'm going to tap my spacebar twice and then grab it and scale it in on these axes, pull it in just a little bit, tap my spacebar again, and then let's see, let's come over here and just kind of center it on our platform. So if I don't get it just right here, let's see, should get it, let's pull it down, there we go, and alright, that looks good. So it looks like it's all the way around us. Alright, I kind of like that. So we've got our trigger volume. Now let's go ahead and open up make sure your trigger volume is selected, and I'm going to go into blueprints, open level blueprint. And with my level blueprint open and my trigger volume selected, I'm going to right click and choose, make sure context sensitive is selected. I'm going to choose add event for trigger volume 3, collision event, and then add on actor begin overlap. So let's add one of those in there, and then let's pull off of this a timeline. So I'm going to grab here and pull off and type in timeline, and there it is, add timeline. Alright, so I've got my timeline. You can rename it if you want to. I'll just call it elevator underscore 01. How about that? Alright, so I've got my elevator in here, and in order to create something in my elevator, I need to actually, in my timeline, I actually have to double click the timeline. And double clicking it brings open this elevator tab, or my timeline tab, and you can see there is no track here, so let's create one, and I'm just going to use a vector track. So I'm going to add a vector track, and since we're only going up and down, that would be the Z axis, I don't need the X and Y axes, so I'm going to lock them and hide them. I don't need them. Now, just to start out, even though we haven't animated the elevator going up and down, since we're in here, let's go ahead and just create a couple keys. Keys are going to hold transform information. Transforms would be like moving on the X, Y, and Z axis. So I'm simply, and I can see this is the Z axis because it's blue. I'm going to right click here at 0. This is time here in seconds. So I'm just going to right click and say add a key to the Z axis, and I'll go down to 1 second. Actually, let's go down to 2 seconds and right click and say add a key to the Z axis. And if you'll notice, I got it kind of close to 2, but it didn't snap to 2. So I'm just going to click that and type in 2. And the value will change later on. Let's also go back to this key, click it, and let's make that a perfect 0. Alright, and the value, let's make this value 0. Alright, so I've got time 0, value 0 here at this key, and this key is time 0, and we're going to reset the value, or time is 2, and we're going to change the value here shortly. For now, that looks good. Let's go back into our event graph and compile it, and we're going to do some things here now. Alright, I've got a couple other things to do. In here, because I'm going to pull this down because I want to just drag that, I just want to drag my elevator, so that's my elevator right there. I have it selected. I've got this cube. I'm just going to drag it right in here. And so it does it. That's one way to do it. Another way of doing it is if you have it selected and if you just simply right click in your level blueprint, and it says create a reference to the cube, so I'm just going to do that. So there's two ways of doing that. And you can see it's the same cube. It's two different references, but it's the same. It's the same cube, so you don't have to worry about it. All right, now let's get moving on this. So when our avatar overlaps the trigger volume, this timeline is going to play, and that's going to make my elevator move up and down. But we've got to make some changes here. So first of all, let's pull off of the update or drag off of it, and let's type in set actor relative location. And if it doesn't come up here, that's because I have context sensitive checked, so I'm going to uncheck it. There it is. So I'm going to press the enter key, and it pops right up. Whoops, turn that on, and click there. All right, so that looks good. I'm going to pull this over a little bit so I have some space here. The next thing I need to do is I need to put a target in there, and that's why I dragged a cube out here, is because the target for changing the relative location of my cube is going to be the cube right there. So I'm setting the actor relative location. Keep in mind the word relative here, okay? So because that's going to be important when we do the timeline. Now I need a new relative location here, and I could type in some coordinates. But instead of doing that, let's do something else. Let's get a variable out here for the initial location of my door, because I have the new location, but then I need to have the initial location of it. And I don't really have anything. Oh, actually I did create one, but I'm going to delete that so we can create another one. And so I need to have a initial location of my elevator here. So let's go into variables, and let's just click the plus sign, and it creates a variable. And I'm going to call it elevator initial location. And if it is not a vector like this, if it's the first time creating it, it will be a Boolean. So then you'll just, with it selected, you'll come over here in the details, click, and instead of Boolean, change it to a vector. That's all you need to do. All right, great. Now I need to get that in here, so it's just really quick and easy. I'm going to click it and drag it right out here. And what I'd like to do is set, or actually for this one I'd like to get my elevator initial location. And I want to put it in there, but if I put my initial location into my new relative location, they'll be the same, and I don't want that. So what we really need to do is we're going to take the initial location of the elevator, we are going to add to it the relative Z information from our timeline, and the output of that will be our new relative location. So if you're wondering how are we going to add these two together, remember that when we created this variable, it is a vector variable. So I'm going to drag off of this, and I'm just going to type in the plus sign. Shift equals is plus sign. And I see a couple things with the plus sign here, but what I'm really looking for, if I go down just a little bit, is my vector plus vector. Click that. Very good. And I'm actually going to put this on the bottom one, and this one's going to go at the top one, because I don't like crossing wires if I don't have to. It just helps me to keep it nice and clean. So remember, we're taking the initial location of our elevator. We're going to add to it the relative location information from our timeline, and then we're going to output that, and that will be our new relative location. All right, awesome. So that's what that is. All right. Now this isn't quite done yet, because if I were to do this right now, if I take this, compile it, it does compile, but if I come over here into my, oh, we haven't even animated it yet. So let's try it anyway. If I play and go over there, it just disappears. I don't even know where it went. Nothing happened. All right, so we got to fix that. All right, so it's down here. I'm going to select my elevator, and remember we said we were going to remember the initial location is 135, and I'm going to pull it up just to see if I pulled it up there. It's about 345. So remember we're dealing with relative numbers in the timeline. Okay, so 345 minus 135. Let me do the math here. I'm going to pull up my calculator. So I can do the math. I just want to show everybody. 345 minus 135 is going to give us 210. That's the number that we're going to put in our relative location. All right? Because 135, starting at 135 and going up to 345 is the same as starting at 0 and going up to 210. Remember, we're just using that as a relative location. So I'm going to get back into my timeline, which is over here in the elevator. Now I know what number to put in the key here for a value. That would be 210. So it's going to start at 0, the relative location, and then when it goes all the way up, it will be 210. Enter. There it is. And because I got back into it, I need to hide these again. There we go. All right, now I can't really see where it is, so I have these nice two little zoom buttons here, so I'm going to zoom to fit and zoom to fit. And now it goes from 0 to 2 seconds, and the value goes from 0 to 345, or I'm sorry, 210. All right, and that looks pretty good to me. I kind of like that. So I'm going to go back into my event graph. Now we're still not ready. This is still not going to work. There's a reason I pulled this cube out here. Let's compile it though. I'm going to show you what's going to happen. So I'm going to play. Oh, look at that. I left it in its position 345. I don't want that as its initial position. Let's drop it down. I'll just press the N key. That's the initial position. Remember, about 135 there. So even if I go play this now, it's still not ready. All right, it still disappears. There it is. It showed up, and I can jump on it. Maybe. There we go. And so so it'll do that, but it's not quite ready. So let's go back into here. We have one more thing to do. We have the, pardon the dog, we have our cube here, which is our elevator, and we need to get the location of that elevator. All right, so let's drag out of this and just type in get actor location. There it is, and notice the output, because it's a location, it is a vector output right there. It's yellow, meaning it's a vector output. So I'm going to drag this, and there's nothing right now to connect that to. Let's pull it back just a little bit. I need to set. Now I have the initial location, and there it is, but this doesn't really tell me anything yet. I need to actually set the initial location of this. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to pull this out again, this variable. Last time we did a get elevator initial location. This time we want to set it. So I'm going to click there. Notice there's a vector input, so I'm going to grab that and connect the vector input. And then out of here, I just want it to start from the beginning of play. As soon as my level plays, it should go ahead and set the initial location of the cube so that it can pull, so it can get the initial location and input it into there. All right, hope you're still following me. So I'm just going to drag off of this, and let's type in event. How about event begin play? Boom. All right, so let me walk you through this one more time, just so to make sure you understand it. And I'll pull this all this down here so we can see it a little bit better. And since those two are, that's the getter, that's the setter. All right, here we go. So when my player overlaps the trigger volume, the elevator will begin to play. So it's going to go from 0 to 210, right? But that's a relative number, and since the elevator is actually has an initial location here, we're going to get the initial location of the elevator. We're going to get that in here. We're going to add it to the timeline numbers. It's going to output here, and that's going to be the new relative location of the elevator. All right, let's take a look. Let's compile, and let's see if we can play. So I'm going to hit play. Let's run over there. Boom. There it is. Look at that. Woohoo! All right, now what if I got one more thing here. It didn't come down. Let's give it enough time for the player to step off of it and then have it come right back down again. And that'll be the end of what we do. All right, so let's come in here. And if you'll notice, I do have a reverse channel in here. So let's get, last time we had an on-actor begin overlap. And this time, let's select the trigger volume. Let's Let's go into here. I'm going to right click again, context sensitive, add event, add a collision event. This time when we end overlapping, okay, when we end overlap. Now, notice that my trigger volume is really small. And as soon as that elevator goes up and gets to about 100 up here, it's done overlapping. So it would come right back down again. It would start to reverse. I don't want to do that. Okay? So let's give it some time to complete it. Remember that my timeline was 2 seconds long. So let's just give it time to do that, shall we? So I'm going to make, I'm going to make a delay. So I'll pull off my executable, type in delay. There it is, delay. And I'll make it delay by 2 seconds. And then when it is completed, delaying 2 seconds, we're simply going to reverse and go the opposite direction. How's that sound? All right, let me pull this in a little bit closer. And I'll take a snapshot of this and share it with everybody. And that looks pretty good. Maybe I can pull that back a little bit and get everything in here. All right, compile in here. Now it should work. Let's play. All right, I'm stepping on it. 1001, 1002. It comes back down, hits the trigger volume, goes back up. 1001, 1002. There it is. So I can just keep playing it over and over again. 1001, 1002. All right. See? All right, very good. That's how to use the timeline for an elevator. Very simple. Hope you enjoyed it. This is I Teach 3D. And subscribe to my channel and shoot me a like. Give me some feedback. Thanks a lot. Bye.